Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another weekend show with Mr. Dixon. Stephen, nice to see you, my friend. And the obvious question, where are you? Where am I? I'm actually, I'm at one of my brother's houses because of the storms that we had, and I'm still got no internet at home. So BT, hoping that you'll respond quicker than you have done and to get me back online. And where are you, Steve?
I'm still at home in Malaysia for another 5 hours and 20 minutes before I depart on a flight to Istanbul and then onwards to a location in Europe.
Right, very good. Hush, hush, eh? Keep that one secret. Right, Steve. I mean, we can't start or get involved with anything other than the obvious. So, you know, the Ukraine situation, that's absolutely terrible, huh?
Yeah, as you and I spoke offline just before we sort of started recording for the show, I just said to you, Chris, that I thought this was, I thought, prayed and hoped that this just was, I wouldn't say a little bit of brinksmanship, but let's say it was an element of brinksmanship, and that this wouldn't eventuate or turn into the absolute crisis and devastating situation for the Ukrainian people that it has done. Putin has just no regard whatsoever for the sovereignty of Ukraine. I watched the Ukrainian president on his broadcast this morning that he recorded on his own mobile phone, outside buildings in Kiev. We must call it Kiev now, of course, and not Kiev. Kiev was the old Russian name, so Kiev is what the Ukrainians want us to call it. I was watching ITV News this morning with Mary Nightingale, and her and Geraint still failed to recognize that it had moved from Kiev to Kiev, so we really should call it Kiev. In solidarity with the Ukrainians. But yeah, the president, Zelensky, who was an ex-comedian, before he came into politics, certainly there's no comedy here when you're running the economy in the country of Ukraine. But he was absolute sort of stoic, Chris. I mean, his stoicism, actually, all of the Ukrainians that I've seen, the stoicism is what really sort of runs through every interview or image that you see, whether it's the 80-year-old grandmother holding the AK-47 who's just been given her license to hold arms, which the government have issued to the public. I mean, quite an incredible scenario. But to have this on our doorstep in Europe, in a European country, Chris, on the continent of Europe, where we've had peace since the 90s, since the breakup of Yugoslavia and the mess that fell out with that around the Balkans, as our listeners will remember, but also the fall of the Iron Curtain and the fall of the Berlin Wall. I mean, I can't quite believe that we are back to this point. It is really rather devastating, and it's quite saddening, really, to watch this happen.
It really is, Steve. And for anybody that's been there, visited or worked there, I spent quite a bit of time there, and to see some of the parts of the city that are being shown on the TV, and knowing that you walked there or you went round the monument, or it's terrible just to think that 10 days ago people were doing what we're doing now, and talking about what might or could happen. But then to see the devastation and some of the impacts that have happened now, it was unthinkable. Now it's reality.
Yeah, I just can't believe it. I mean, obviously, we've just sort of coming out of the back end or the tail end of COVID. And of course, we were all hoping that sort of a level of normal order would be restored in the world. And then Putin thinks that this is the opportune time for him to go and annex further parts of Ukraine under a false premise. I have to say also, I've been rather pleased with the messaging and the requests that have come out of Downing Street, and rather disappointed with the action from the rest of the European Union, in particular the Germans, who sat back and watched. And of course, Biden has had, been, I mean, whether Biden's awake most of the time, I don't know, but his inaction, Chris, has been palpable. And of course, Putin has taken real advantage of that. And Zelensky is saying, you've got to come to the party and help us here. So,
yeah. I was listening to a couple of people saying about, the lack of any ships or whatever, that would normally be there this time of the year, and there's been absolutely nothing.
Yeah. No, it's really sad. And of course, now, I think all of that, Russia, of course, tit for tat, banned from UK airspace, not yet banned from European airspace, bizarrely.
Aeroflot.
Yeah. So, the Belarus, I think Ukraine and some other country there has been sort of called essentially a war zone now. So all that airspace is now closed. But it's amazing how money talks. So for all the talk of sanctions and the impact of those sanctions, I mean, Putin has a sizable war chest. I'm told by news journalists, but also countries like Italy have managed to circumvent the embargoes on luxury leather goods. So Gucci and Prada, amongst others, have managed to continue exporting to. So, well, this won't really affect the normal people. So we'll continue doing as we're doing. And the Italian government and the European Union, the shits that they are, have supported it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, and I'm not being funny, Steve. I don't want to upset anybody, but it just goes to show about. The European Union is supposed to be this one collaborative, supportive community. It's, I just can't understand how some of the countries now are walking away from it because they don't want to alienate themselves early on. God forbid it was on their doorstep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're terrible. And Man United, so that's it. Their sponsorship deal with Aeroflot, that'll be going west.
Well, I see a lot of that. Formula One cancelled.
Yeah, quite rightly so.
Poland now refused to play a qualifier next month with Russia. All sorts of stuff going on. But look, let's be clear, Chris. I do feel sorry for, of course, the Ukrainian people, but actually, every sort of normal, sane Russian has said how ridiculous this is. The trouble is that in that environment, they can't protest. Otherwise, they get sort of hauled off into a van and they're never seen again. So it's very difficult. But the protests that I saw yesterday in Moscow, people are, this is crazy. The tennis player yesterday in the Dubai Open wrote, Russian tennis player. He said, no to war. He wrote it on the camera, on the lens of the television camera. He wrote it right there. So clearly, it's not. Ordinary Russian people don't want this as much as
nobody, Steve. Nobody wants it. There's very few situations where it would be warranted. But anyhow, God bless everybody that's been affected, and please God, that there'll be fewer people killed than possible. So that's all that can be said. Now, Stevie, we speak about Qatar a lot. We speak about your beloved Australia a lot. And now there's a little bit of news about Qatar adding even more Australian flights to meet demand.
Well, the tourism, since Australia opened its doors, whatever that was, 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, the Tourism Australia campaign has gone down like a little bit like a wet fish in the UK. There was a massive advert taken out, must have cost them a fortune, on Piccadilly Circus, on the famous what are now electronic digital billboards. But of course, Chris, you will remember in days gone by with men with rollers, papering up the adverts. But just in Piccadilly Circus, they had this massive campaign that was launched around, you're our best mates and we want you back. And then the Brits went, up yours, we ain't coming back because you kept us locked away for 2 years. Now, that will dissipate over time, of course, and that was an immediate response, sort of there. But I don't see people making the long trek to Australia like they used to do. Brits used to go on holiday to Australia a lot. And that's because most of us have got family in Australia, I suspect. Or Aussies have got family in the UK because most of them came from the UK, so that's been reciprocated for a long time. But so much as Australia wants to open up, I suspect there's a lot of pent up outbound demand, Chris, because they haven't been able to leave their penal colony themselves for the last 2 years. It kind of went back to what Australia was originally purposed for in the 19th century, which was to deal with our convicts. So before the £10 pom was coined. But anyway, look, in a slightly more serious note, Australia does have a large domestic market that has been able to sort of keep things ticking over, but it's international travel where the money is, both for Australian carriers and also for carriers like UCL, like Qatar. So it's good to see that. I know Qatar started to operate additional routes. At one stage, Qatar was the only way in and out of Australia.
Yeah. Of many places.
And many places, yeah. So it's good to see them announce capacity increase. But I hope also, Chris, that they maintain rights to operate into places like Brisbane that they'd never done before. And that's really good, I suspect. But yeah, look, as we're going into the Australian winter, it probably is
Exactly.
not peak season for Europeans to be heading there anyway. But by the time October next year arrives with the winter schedule kicking off, I suspect things might be rather different.
Yeah. It reminds me, when you were talking about stories there, I remember there was a story, I'm not sure how true it was, that when the England rugby team were going in there when they won the World Cup, and as they got to immigration, one of the immigration officers thought he'd have a joke with Clive Woodward. And he looked at his passport and he said, have you got a criminal record? And Clive Woodward said, I didn't think you still needed one to get into Australia. I thought it was brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, weekend, Chris. Ireland got a big game today.
Yeah. No. It's just so lovely. I love these rugby weekends.
That'll be another drubbing for Italy, I suspect.
Oh yeah. I think probably one of the biggest one they've had, I think, now.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you got England today.
England, France today. Is that right?
Yeah. That's going to be. And I do you know something? I think England are going to win. I think they're going to win by at least 7 to 10 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope they do. Fingers crossed. Now, listen, another thing, talking about COVID, and at the beginning of the show, we said with COVID.
England-Wales today. It's England-Wales today, not England-France. Scotland-France today, and England-Wales later. Yeah.
Oh, well, I still stand by the same. I still think England will 10 points. What I was going to say is, we talked about COVID dissipating and people getting on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you look at Hong Kong, they still banned, KLM and Singapore-based Scoot for the latest long line of airlines, copping this 2-week ban that they do there because of people arriving with COVID cases on board.
This is utter bollocks. These honkies have got a lot to answer for. They're absolutely under the cosh of Beijing and Chairman Xi. And I think Carrie Lam, the chief executive of Hong Kong, can you believe there's such a job? Chief executive of a territory. I mean, just goes to show it's all utter bollocks. Let's say that she's the Hong Kong premier or so-called, but yeah, the Hong Kong CEO is really under the cosh of Beijing. You saw all the oppression that has been there in the last couple of years, and the silencing of democracy, the silencing of Apple News, the only free media outlet was closed down, and you've seen this zero COVID policy applied, not just in earnest, Chris, but in full kind of gusto, levels of controls that you would never have seen anywhere else. Young babies taken away from their mothers, young babies who've caught COVID, not allowed to stay with the mother, forcibly removed from their parents. This is despicable. Hong Kong is a place that I spent a lot of time.
Me too. Yeah.
I spent time there, living there for a very short period in Aberdeen Street, right in Central. And so it's very sad for me to see this, Chris. I think the impact to our industry is simply that Cathay Pacific is dead. The Hong Kong hub is dead, and it will never recover. I say that, you know, as somebody who, in the sort of 2000s, you know, before sort of Changi took the jewel, if you like, and you know, sort of placed Singapore as the main hub. The main hubs in Asia prior to Singapore really, you know, growing its position and its importance were Kuala Lumpur, where I am now, you know, and Hong Kong, and you could get pretty much anywhere in Asia from Europe via KL or Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So whilst KL has sort of, you know, lost a bit of that activity, it's still present and you can still do that. But MAS is no longer in its golden era, let's say, and Changi has taken over that crown. So Hong Kong, I think, will not recover. Cathay Pacific, I think, will be a casualty of this crisis. It's a matter of when, not if, in my view. Certainly, it will be a very much scaled back operation if it ever exists. And of course, remember that Air China is already a large shareholder in Cathay in any case. And probably, I suspect, a transaction might be forthcoming down the line, Chris, where Air China just picks up the Cathay operation where it left off, feeds into mainland China, and the Swire Group very reluctantly and sadly, I'm sure, will exit stage left. But it's very sad. The treatment of people, the treatment of business and commerce is despicable. And actually, nobody has yet spoken out about it from the Western world. It's quite amazing. Maybe they learned the lessons a few years ago, but I think also what, of course, upset the Chinese was the fact that that the UK gave out 1 million or more passports to Hong Kong nationals, and that was really a great thing. So I suspect that we'll need a few British Airways A380s to ferry many more honkies out of there and into the UK. I say honkies by the way, term of endearment. Nothing, locally, colloquially, we use that term. It's not supposed to be an issue, but people might be sort of worried that I'm calling honkies. It's not at all.
I was gonna have a caveat or a disclaimer at the end of the show, Steve, just in case. So it reminded me of a show that
people that don't live in this part of the world get very upset about these kind of things. But actually, locally, we're very much happy to call each other bananas or honkies. It's okay.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that one, my friend. That's
I thought I ought to before the legal department from Parveen's team were onto me.
Yeah. No, well done. Listen, another thing, my nephew. Okay, he loves aircraft and everything. And I was around his house yesterday, and he asked me about the Antonov. You know, so you know he's seen news that the 225, that the 225 had been damaged or possibly blown up there at Antonov Airport in Hostomel, and it was interesting to see the comment from one of the chief pilots saying that it was still intact, and it would be a shame. You know, things like that, you know, the one only largest aircraft, you know, if that was destroyed, that would be a terrible shame as well.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times, Chris, because I used to, many years ago when I had a sort of a, must have been an inkling work for the civil service, and the most sort of boring firm that I could possibly work for, which was the British Airports Authority. Can you believe it? It was boring then. It probably is boring now. Suits probably a lot of ex-government servants or civil servants that like, you know, order and discipline and not much activity. It didn't suit me, needless to say. Anyway, when I was at the BAA, we were we regularly saw the 225 arrival. We also saw was it the 147? Is that the other? Yeah. And the other, that fascinating multi turbine job.
Yeah.
17 or something, I can't remember. But anyway, these were
turbines, yeah.
Fascinating, yeah. Counter rotating. Anyway, 124 and the 225. Yeah, I think they were amazing machines. But there was only one 225. Is that right? Ever built?
Well, I'm not sure if it was only one, but there's only one in operation. Myrnia or
Maria,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, MRYA or MRIYA. Yeah.
Yeah, Miria, something like that. Yeah. But it's I mean, an incredible piece of work. It's amazing. But now on top of it, on top of all of these issues, Steve, and even they're talking about how the West could be helping by getting involved in, all different types of cyber attack, etc. But our industry been hit again a couple of times, and it's not going to be the last. And I would strongly recommend that people out there now who think that their own IT departments are capable of preventing certain attacks and hacks and basic cyber hygiene, they need to get in touch with some experts. So a little offer, if anybody needs to get in touch with an expert, please get in touch, and we'll happily put them in touch with somebody who specializes in those areas, because it is so active and prevalent now. It's crazy. And it's not about whether it will happen. It most definitely will happen, but the secret is knowing that it's happening. So you've got a chance, to recover and look at things. And also crisis management now is something that people are going to have to start thinking a lot more about. But again, I would suggest anybody who feels that their IT departments are good enough, robust enough, and safe enough, have another look, because it's not about pride and ego. It's about protecting. And there's some very, very high profile businesses that have been hit just lately, and the impact is ongoing.
Well, I think I think it's no harm in mentioning it, Chris, because it's public news. It was Swissport that was massively affected by this attack a few weeks ago. Something called Black Cat or Blackware or something, who'd sort of called out their responsibility for this using something called ransomware.
Yeah.
Black Cat, and as I say, it's public news, so no harm there. Swissport have responded swiftly and put the sort of the fallback procedures and so on in place. But that'll be a wake up call for them. But it should be a wake up call for everybody. But the other one is today, Chris, is British Airways cancels all, today being Saturday, 26th of February, currently at 10:40 GMT. British Airways cancels all short-haul flights from London Heathrow.
Yeah.
And that is a combination of ongoing disruption over the last few days, I think, and also all of their systems have been affected over the last 24 hours, including their IBE, their PSS, their DCS, all that sort of good stuff. As said, as of today, all of their systems are down. So I was due to be taking a BA short-haul flight from Heathrow on Monday. I've changed that to move my flight from Heathrow to London City and fly back to London City rather than take the risk of going via Heathrow.
Yeah. No, so Expedite is another company. It's that's been put out there as well. But it just goes to show the size of these organisations now that are having these difficulties. And
British Airways are no stranger to this, Chris.
Pardon?
British Airways are no stranger to
No, but it makes, do you know what I'm saying? It's one thing to say, somebody's no stranger, but it's a little bit like, why do some organisations, why does it keep happening to them?
Well, in the same way that when things fail and when you can't kick the ball in the back of the net and you don't change your strategy, we sort of just keep on, let's keep our heads down and keep doing the same thing over and over again. Businesses do that, teams do that, governments do that. It seems to be a way of keeping oneself occupied whilst not solving the problem. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And talking about British Airways and IAG, they're looking at now, asset sales, to raise cash, and basically almost everything's on the table.
Well, I'm not really sure what they're going to be selling, because they seem to sell off most of their assets.
Well, what they talked about, they were talking about their mileage program, the loyalty.
Oh, here we go again, Avios. Yeah, they've sold that about 3 times and bought it back.
Yeah, so that obviously
that's what you remember, because as Air Miles, the original Air Miles club.
Yeah, but that's a popular one. And then you look at IAG Cargo. So that's one.
I'll tell you what would be good is if they sold that stupid ground handling business that they continue to operate at Heathrow.
Yeah, there you go.
That's I would have thought that British Airways still operate that.
That's a big one. Yeah. So there's that. Then there's their global business service, the IT procurement and financial.
Oh yeah, GBS, such a well-oiled, efficient machine, GBS.
Well, I hope they don't come to you to sell any of these assets, because you've already marked them down.
I'm a shareholder in IAG, Chris, so I ought not to be, but
And you're on a roll, my friends. You're
I'm
on a
also
roll.
a shareholder.
son.
I'm also a shareholder in Menzies.
Yes, yes, yes. And I heard one of the
Hey!
lovely. Listen, I heard one of the loveliest stories for a long time yesterday, right? So somebody I've got so much time for hasn't been very well lately, and in fact has been very poorly, but got good news just recently. Now, prior to that good news, they made a mistake and they purchased many thousands of extra Menzies shares and thought they made a big mistake and bought them around the £1.5, £1.10 level. So a beautiful, beautiful windfall.
That's a long time ago, is it? Never been down there for a while.
It's been it's not that long, Steve. It's just at the beginning of the pandemic. So not
Chris,
that far. Yeah,
I can't tell you what I bought for, but I didn't buy anywhere near that. Sadly.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean. It was, you just hear some good news, and I said to him, I said, if ever anybody deserved some good,
You're
good
right.
luck,
Yeah,
good fortune like that.
2020 down it dropped to 7 to 8p.
Yeah,
4p. I sadly bought at the sort of the earlier years of a good run that they had, and it's only ever gone south. So I'm rather smug with myself now because I'll be able to recover my losses and a small profit.
there you go, mate. There you go. And then
congrats. I think that's going to be very interesting, Chris. If it does complete, and we should say it's all subject to regulatory approval and the usual caveat.
Yeah.
But if that does go through, I think there'll be a few people that worked really hard on that, and some people that have been in Menzies for a very long time, who probably will I would suspect, decide to take a bit of a back seat or a more leisurely life, including probably some time on the golf course, whether that's with Mervyn or John Redmond or Al Reid or these lads who I think we've known for actually Alistair Reid, I must call. I've known Alistair. Alistair gave me my first proper aviation job at a first real big airport, Edinburgh Airport, in the 90s, when he was at Service Air. So I've got a lot to thank Alistair for, a lot of time with Alistair. But him and his colleagues, I suspect, will probably have done quite well. But through difficult times of the last couple of years for sure.
Yeah, no, good luck. Yeah, and like you said, he's a cracking fella, and good luck to him. Alistair, Mervyn, John, all of them. It's nice. It's also nice when things like that happen. You work for a company for a long time, you put everything in, and then something like this happens, and you get a nice windfall. Good on them.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. They have the other one. John Geddes is the other one, of course, been there for forever.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yes. So let's see what transpires there. But Chris, I suspect that is indicative not just of the value of Menzies longer term, and the broader value within our industry. And that's good for everybody, whether you're a competitor to Menzies or whether you work for Menzies or whether you work in the industry. I think overall, this paints a picture that there is value within aviation supply chain businesses, and that should be recognized by all of us. But it does give sort of rise to the question, what other consolidation might there be going forward?
Yep, 100%. And I think there's going to be lots more, Steve. And with that, my friend, let's bring it to an end, and let's hope that this next week now brings a little bit of better news, both globally, locally, and for everybody, but especially for those in the Ukraine.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, absolutely.